going to invite the U.S. Representative District 25 Democrats to the Okay, at this time we will have opening remarks. We'll begin with Mr. Montoya. 2 minutes.
As a Texas State University retiree, I love being in San Marcos. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Montoya. I want to be your representative from Congressional District 25, stretching from Hays to Tarrant County. I am the representative that will live and work and vote with you. I'm prepared to be a bipartisan member of the Congress, ready to promote district needs as part of our national interest, ready to address our national problems, and commit myself to promote a more perfect union. I immigrated from Mexico, became an Eagle Scout, and as a teenager, an American citizen. I joined the Army, became a staff sergeant, a lieutenant, and transferred to the U.S. Public Health Service as a lieutenant commander. I retired as a captain. I've served as a Texas Assistant Commissioner for Health Affairs with oversight of health professions education in Texas public universities and health science centers. And I funded the Texas Primary Care Residency Program. Our nation faces many problems. I am running because I'm dissatisfied with our lack of district representation, the lack of regular order in the U.S. House leadership. I want to address our national debt with a budget promoting an infrastructure for our economy, jobs, and business growth. I have the education, training, skills, experience to serve our district with a doctorate in the area of social demography for public policy issues, a master's in educational psychology to improve our educational pathways, a master's in public health to work with the Affordable Health Care Act, and for defense of VA issues, I'm a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Naval War College. Thank you.
Mr. Stewart Gord.
Howdy folks, I'm Stuart Gord. I'm an ordinary citizen who decided to run for office because I saw that nothing was happening in Washington. Things are all tied up there. Nobody's getting anything done. People are fighting with each other. I think it's time that we quit talking about who's right and who's wrong and talk about making progress versus regression, because we need to make progress. We need to make things happen. We need to work with people of all kinds of stripes, of all kinds of philosophies. Like I said, I'm an ordinary citizen. I worked with the Texas Workforce Commission for a while, and I worked with some of the most underprivileged people out there, folks who are trying to find jobs. We are having a hard time finding people jobs. The jobs are all going away. We need to make policies that will bring those jobs back. And there are ways we can bring those jobs back. We have an infrastructure that's crumbling. We need to get people to work building that infrastructure. We have energy policy that needs improving. We need to put people to work on energy. There are many ways that we can put people to work, and we need to be doing that. We need to help the unemployed. We can't be cutting this food stamp program because people will have nothing to do if their food stamps are cut. We've got to improve this country, and we've got to come up with bipartisan solutions. We have to all work together. I'm not here to tell you that a certain thing is right or a certain thing is wrong. I'm here to tell you that we need to make things happen. I've worked on the ground as a neighborhood association president. I helped start a planning area contact team. I help ordinary citizens get together and communicate their concerns to the people in government. And I hope you'll let me continue to do that. Thank you very much, and I would appreciate your vote and your support.
Thank you. First question, Mr. Montoya, 1 minute. Should the minimum wage be raised, and if so, how much?
Definitely the minimum wage should be raised. The current rate is unacceptable. It has been talked about raising it to $10.10. That is still way below. I would argue at least $15. Every dollar that's given in wages goes into the local economy, eventually contributes to economic development and furthers job development. As an example, going to a university in Texas costs $19,000 plus $20,000. In addition, a minimum wage for living wage definition is $17,000. That's a $3,000 difference, just more needed to go to college. So it tells you that we know students have a hard time. Having less money is even less acceptable. I support the living wage, and I support it now. I'm very disappointed we have unemployed and disenfranchised people in our communities. Thank you.
Mr. Gord, 1 minute.
I believe also that we need a living wage. We need to pay people an adequate amount of money to live in this country. We have a number of people who are not able to make it, who can't find jobs, who need to be able to support their families. We've got to get these people what they need to survive. We've got to help them along. We have a responsibility to keep all our citizens in the loop. We've got to keep everybody productive. We don't want anybody not working up to their potential. And we've got to do things to allow everybody to meet their potential. We've got to have everybody helping us out in making this economy grow. And this economy can't just be going to a few people. It has to be shared among everybody.
Mr. Montoya, 30-second rebuttal.
I fully agree there's a lot to be done. I'm prepared to talk to my fellow 34 representatives in Texas to come up with a solution for Texas. We cannot just talk about increasing the living wage or the minimum wage. We have to tie that also to job development. We have a lot of programs our community colleges offer. Our programs here in San Marcos definitely provide a job development base. The university linkage provides an additional way of growing the workforce for a better wage structure.
Second question, Mr. Gord, 1 minute. What is the role of the federal government in job creation?
The federal government has a potential role in job creation, even though private industry has the major role in job creation. But right now, we have a lot of people out of work, and we have an infrastructure that's crumbling. I believe that we need to be putting people to work building that infrastructure. We need to get people working on our highways. We need to get people working on our bridges. The Texas Society of Engineers, excuse me, I may have the wrong group, but a Society of Professional Engineers gave Texas a D when it comes to bridges. Our bridges are crumbling. We have dams that are crumbling. We have sewer pipes that are crumbling. We have water pipes that are crumbling. And we can put these people to work, and we can craft legislation that allows the federal government to help them, that allows state and local governments to help them, and that allows private industry to help them find jobs.
Mr. Montoya, 1 minute.
There's no question that the federal government does have a role. It doesn't produce jobs by itself. I realize that it's not a job maker, it's a job facilitator. As in terms of the national goal of having the American dream, that includes employment. To do that, you have to have education. So the basic support we have to provide from the congressional level is a foundation in educational systems that provide the capacity of students to engage in productive market employable skills. The whole issue of globalization requires that the government be involved. We've progressed from the colonial period. We are in a multi-country competitive world. There are more Chinese learning and speaking English than Americans exist. So we have to have governmental involvement, whether it's foreign relations relative to trade, which produce jobs, whether it's supporting union-made jobs, we need to have a role in the activity.
Mr. Gord, 30-second rebuttal.
I completely agree that we need to boost education. We have an educational system that's fallen behind many other countries in the world and getting worse every year. I think that many of you remember a time when you could watch TV and not see the captions all being misspelled. We've got to get our students a quality education so that they can get through high school and college if they wish, college, technical school, whatever education they need to get them the jobs that they need.
Third question, Mr. Montoya, 1 minute. In spite of the Affordable Care Act, many low-income Texans have no health insurance. How do you propose to address this problem?
Definitely a problem for our state citizens. Approximately 8% of the district I wish to represent is under the salary annual income of about $20,000. I believe that one approach to this is to come up with a way of bypassing the direct currently required state involvement. I believe the Centers for Medicare Services can provide a mechanism by which a hospital, through its funding mechanisms and its appropriate mechanisms for reimbursement, can request funding for people who would otherwise be Medicaid eligible in the state. I believe the government at the federal level has the responsibility of finding a way around the current limitations based on state legislative or political leadership.
Mr. Gord, 1 minute.
I feel that it was a tragedy that the state of Texas turned down the Medicaid funding that was needed to fund our healthcare system. Because you may not think it was important for you personally, but it's raising your healthcare costs. Because when poor people have to go to the emergency room, it makes everybody else's costs go up. We have more costs for healthcare in this country than every other country on earth. Our healthcare is more expensive. The federal government can help by crafting policies that will get more poor people that healthcare and work around the Medicaid problems. And we have to also work with the state of Texas to get them to accept that Medicaid money because that's a critical part of our healthcare system. We also have to work to bring costs down. Our costs are so high. People are going to other countries to have procedures done, and that's unacceptable.
Mr. Montoya, 30-second rebuttal.
Quickly, I think my opponent needs to restate the issue of healthcare costs increasing. Costs are increasing, but not specifically just because they're increasing. It's a matter in which we reimburse physicians and hospital groups. That needs to be re-examined. Given that we re-examine those rates, the question of how to improve upon the Medicaid monies that are not being utilized requires that the government not reimburse fully for emergency room services of otherwise Medicaid eligible individuals. It's a regulatory process.
Fourth question, Mr. Gord, 1 minute. In light of the increased enrollment in food stamp program, is it adequately funded? Please explain your answer.
I believe it is not adequately funded. If some people have taken the challenge of trying to live on what people are given in food stamps, and granted, those people want to be working. They want to have good jobs. They can't find jobs. We've got to increase the food stamp funding so that they can feed their families while we're working on ways to get them jobs. Because right now, there are not enough good jobs for them. And we have to have adequate funding in the food stamp program. The farm bill that was passed, it gave subsidies to big corporations and it cut the food stamps. We need to turn that around. We need to put more money in the food stamp program and we need to cut the subsidies for big corporations. Because big corporations are already making a lot of profit and they don't need our help. The people who need our help need the money for the food stamp program.
Mr. Montoya, 1 minute.
The issue of food stamps, as was mentioned, was recently part of the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill passed through a so-called bipartisan effort, which involved maintaining some of the subsidies, for example, in the area of sugar, and secondly, by reducing the number of food stamp recipients by approximately 1 million. Consequently, the issue before us, we agree that there needs to be a method of addressing the food needs of our population, especially those most in need of that assistance. That's a given. How do we do that? What are we going to cut out in addition of the Farm Bill that continues into the next session, which will be a 4-year period? And that means, what are we willing to negotiate? I say, for one thing, that yes, you can address the subsidies, but it's going to have to be more than that in order to reach a bipartisan agreement. It is impossible to just say, well, reduce the number of subsidies. There has to be a balance.
Mr. Gord, 30-second rebuttal.
I agree that you can't just reduce the subsidies, but you can reduce enough of the subsidies to feed all the people on food stamps, because it was done before this bill was passed. So it is possible. What we need to do is come up with the political will to pass that, and we need to work with each other, with people who have all kinds of philosophies to make that happen. And people need to talk to their representatives if they're hurting and on food stamps and on unemployment, and tell them that they need help.
At this time, we'll entertain audience questions. If you have a question,